skips rocks to go, and Redstone sends down a runner to clear the house. Hank Blanchard has to make both his last rocks count to square the match and force an extra end. All Redstone of Trail needs is to remove that Nova Scotia rock, and victory is his.
That when you walked in the curling rink from Spokane Street, on the right-hand side was the door, the entrance door, and you walked into kind of a vestibule, which was also a woodshed. And so all the wood that was cut for there, and then made a turn to the right, or excuse me, to the left, and there was the big lounge of the five sheets. It was a fair-sized lounge, actually. And, you know, I used to be over there watching the fellows curl and that, and it was funny. I remember in the old days, when they came off the ice, they would, you know, they were going to have a drink or whatever, so they would sit down around the stove and everybody's getting warm. And the guy would say to me, Jim, will you go get my bottle for me? So I could walk into the woodshed, pull out the wood, and there was his bottle was in behind, so I knew where the rocks were in a box, and we have a couple of one sample up on the rink. Excuse me. So your two rocks are in there, and behind in the curling sheet and in front of the lounge was quite a deck. You know, that was a long thing for 5 sheets, and all these boxes would be there, and you would go to your box when you were going to curl, take your rocks out, put them on the ice, play with them. When you finish, lift them, put them back in. And on spill, you had to take your rocks with you. So you can imagine 4 boxes with those rocks sitting there. Took up a little bit of room in those old cars. A lot of times they were strapped into the running board, or they had a spot for them. Wow. Because when you got 4 fellows and 4 sets of career, plus your luggage, you know, those cars weren't all that huge. But in any case, that's what they used to do. Curling rink decided that they had to do something with the rink. The rink was getting old, and it was built to, like I said, about 1915. So by this time it was, you know, 45 years old, no, 35 years old. So they decided that they would sell the curling club, sell the property, salvage the timbers, and build a curling rink on the side of the arena. 1953 season, I believe, was the last. Summer of '54, they tore the building down and started the construction of the top of the arena. Now, excuse me, in those days, of course, money was not very hard to find, so it was volunteer labor. So all the guys in the curling club, or a lot of them, you know, worked at Kamiko. They put in a shift at Kamiko, came home, grabbed a sandwich, and went to work at the arena. You know, put in a lot of hours in that building.
Dedication.
Yeah,
wow.
Unbelievable. So it took them 3 years to build it. 1957, they opened up the curling. Trail had just gotten the new Kamiko Arena, so the compressors that were used for the artificial ice were available, and I think they gave them to Rossland because they had no use for them anymore. There are 2 great big compressors. They were called York compressors, not like the new ones that run very, very quickly. These were big, slow, like, when the rink was being constructed, we curled in the skating rink after the hockey season was over. They would put the lines in, carry the rocks over, and that's where we curled for probably 5 weeks or 6 weeks. And so we had a little bit of curling, but not an awful lot. I would think, if I remember correctly, probably 6 weeks it would be the most. It just depended on the hockey team. We had a senior hockey team, the Warriors, and how far they went in the playoffs as to whether they could actually put the curling ice in or not. What it did was it opened, the women curled in the old rink, but it was depended on the weather. Like I said, if it was cold enough, the ice would be keen. But if it was at all balmy out, although we had everything closed off, or they well, especially, excuse me, because they when they opened up the rink, the high school curling club was reinstigated, and I believe there was a picture showing that. There was one available at one time, and so all the kids were able to curl. If you were, I believe it was like grade 7 or grade 8, not younger than that, because they were struggling too much with it. But that's when I started the game, because I hadn't curled other than that couple of weeks every year, and I started again in 1957, so I missed all those years. Yeah. Huge amount of work to be done. You go and look at that rink, and imagine starting that with we had engineer from Cominco did the plans for it. He was a curler. And they just did this and then looked after everything and started pour the footings, and then those big beams that are in there now, they all came out of the old rink. Wow! So they were put there, and they made. If you look at some of them where it goes up above the 12 and 14 foot area, and they made those holders at Cominco. That's when we ended up with artificial ice, sand floor, in the pipes. Then in, I believe it was the late 60s or early 70s, they decided to put a concrete floor in. So the curlers had to take out the pipes and everything else, dig out the sand, put huge blocks of insulation in underneath to prevent the frost from going down. So they did that. Then they had to tie all the rebar in and everything. And then outfit in Castlegar named Charlex, which is still there, came in and poured the floor. Wow. And it has to, of course, be all poured at one time and then all troweled and that. Wow. So there was a lot of work went into that, and even in the later years from the individuals that were in the club. And all the fellows donated the rocks that they had, the private rocks. That's what we curled with for quite a few years until they decided to purchase the rocks which we presently have. The rocks were purchased, and then the new handles put on, and then where we're at today. Basically, we sold the old rocks, to some outfits in Montana. That were starting, the curling clubs were starting. Rocks were very expensive. They didn't have an awful lot of money, so we sold them to them as is. And there was 72 rocks, I believe. My dad's garage was right on the corner of Columbia and Spokane, which was only about 100 yards, maybe at the very most, from the curling club. So in the 30s, when he was a young man and things were kind of slow, he would go over into the rink on the cold days, and they would open all the windows, and that's the way they did it, of course, because it being natural ice, and they started to, he would flood the ice. Yeah, my history would go back to, of course, I was born in 1942, and the curling club was right behind my house, between First Avenue and Columbia Avenue on Spokane Street. Excuse me. So, as a child, youngster, my brothers and I would go over and watch my mother and dad curl sometimes in the evenings, and we would, of course, would go out on the ice and give it a whirl. While it was being natural ice, it was very hard sometimes to get those rocks down, and being quite young, it was a real chore. So like we said, I was talking to you the other day, you just put both feet in the hack and push onto your stomach type of thing to get it down. And Yeah, we used to ride the rocks up and down the ice when the fellas weren't curling, of course, and it was a real pleasure to be in there. The old fellas, they were great, and my dad and a fellow named Ed Delois used to put on a big spaghetti feed a couple times a year, perhaps, to earn money for the curling club. So they would put on a feed, and Mr. Delois was a wonderful chef, a wonderful cook. So was Dad, actually. But so they would put this on and have long tables with coffee cans on the middle, and you would make a donation, whatever it was. So that's what they used to do. So it was a way for sociability. While curling then, it was a real social game. Was a probably more competitive curler than my dad was, really. We didn't do too badly at all. We had some fun, and it was a pleasure to have my mom curl for me, for sure. That's something I wanted to do, and I would think that probably would have been in mid to late 70s, I think. I wanted to get my mother to curl with me in mixed, which she did in Bonspeel, and I think my dad did curl for me as well. And, with my brother, Alfie, and his two boys, I know my brother, when he retired in the winter, he was there 5 days a week.
Wow.
Like they were doing something on the ice, or he was doing the books, or they were getting the liquor for the bar and all that stuff.
Wow.
And then when he passed away unexpectedly in 1997, somebody had to do it, and I just was in the rink all the time, so I just stepped in and took over.
Wow.
My brother, God bless him, was a really good curler, better than I am. And, he never got on I played third for him.
Mm-hmm.
My brother would never get on my case. In all those years I played on him, if I missed a shot, it could be the most important shot in the world. He never made me feel bad about missing that shot. George Nixon, who lived just a couple doors from me, they were facing the curling rink. Well, George and his brother Kent and my brother Alfie and another fellow named Dave Henry, in high school, they curled. They had a high school curling club, and they curled in the rink. And George asked me when I was only 10 or 11 if I would if I wanted to play with him. So that's when I got to curl with George, and I learned a lot about the game from him and playing against the other fellows. And I was only 11 years old, and he had a set of curling rocks that instead of being 40 pounds, they were 32. So they were 8 pounds lighter than a normal rock, and of course a little bit smaller. So I could get those rocks down on a good day. But, with natural ice, you're at the mercy of the weather. You know what? For the first, I retired at 55, and then my brother passed away, so that's why I was in the rink a lot. But I don't think that she even knew I retired for a while. I was in the curling rink 5 days a week, like my brother after, because I had the men's club to do, the society to do. You had the bank on Monday, liquor on Tuesday, besides curling. There on Wednesday to do something. Thursday was liquor again, because it was very busy in those days. They knew me in the liquor store pretty well. But I can remember being there one day, and I walked in the lounge, and there was some guys, younger fellows, watching curling, and they had their feet up by the glass. And I said, fellas, take your feet off the furniture. This guy looked at me and he said, what's your problem? I said, take your feet off the furniture. Do you put your feet on the furniture at home? He said to me, this is not home. I said, excuse me? This is my home. In 1997, when Rossland was 100 years old, excuse me, the Light Opera made a huge streetscape of Rossland, pictures of, or not pictures, but buildings. They actually constructed them and of what it looked like. So there was the Bank of Montreal, there was the Allen Hotel, there was a blacksmith shop, there was a grocery store, etc. And so they made all these things, and they would have been 14 or 15 feet high and probably 8 feet to 10 feet wide maybe. So when the celebration was over, I wondered what they were going to do with these, and they said, well, we're not sure what we're going to do with them. And I said, well, how about if we put them in the curling rink against the arena wall all the way along that? We call that the long mile.
Yeah.
So we did that. Fortunate, I've had some really, really good teams. Most of my teams have never been about winning type of thing. I mean, we always curled well, but it was more that I enjoyed curling with them. So, like I said, we've had some wonderful, wonderful, good volunteers, good helpers. I've been very fortunate. My team's in the men's club. Every time we put on a sausage night or Christmas party or wind-up party, it's my team basically that does it. We've done everything we could to try and keep Roslyn
Alive and vibrant. Yeah.
You know, and over the years, you know, much to thankfully my mom and dad's urging when we were younger, and it was a way to get out of doing homework was to go watch curling. And, you know, this guy says to me, you know, Jimmy said, we can ski in Aspen, we can ski in Vail, we can ski in Stowe, Vermont. He said, we can ski anywhere in the world, but we can only ski and curl in Rossland.
Well, the house is rocking, everything's looking alright. We're here for the beer, but we got a little business inside. We're gonna be cool, we're gonna be hot, we're ready to fight. We're gonna take it to the limit and play with fire tonight. Rockabilly baby, we're playing in the briar tonight. Red rocks, yellow rocks, sweeping so it never stops. Roll that rock a little more. Yes, no hurry, we'll make that hit and roll. That's what we came here for. And there's gonna be noise when we make this shot. Boys, bring this saddle dome down. Can't get no higher when you're playing in the briar in the cowboy town. Then I'm going to the patch. Gonna have me a cool one. Gonna meet up with my buddies. Gonna have a couple more. There's a good band playing there. Gonna have me a dance or two. I'm going to the patch, 'cause that's what we do. There's a big game riding on the line tonight. Gonna take a little risk, gonna get a little rush, alright. Gonna find that zone, better bring it on home. Gonna seize this moment in time. We're gonna take it to the limit and play with fire tonight. Rockabilly baby, we're playing in the briar tonight. But we got one wired, no way out. Opposition running out of time. The lead man says, if you want my opinion, it's Velcro time. Well, we're one down coming home, we got the brick. We're gonna take a deuce for sure. 'Cause the boys like playing their extra end in the house next door. That's right, we're going to the bench. Gonna have us a cool one. Gonna meet up with our buddies. Then we'll have a couple more. There's a good band playing there. Gonna have me a dance or two. Now we're going to the patch, 'cause that's what we do. So we're four up coming home looking pretty good to me. The boys are gonna handle this just fine with three. Well, I'm gonna slip myself right out that door. 'Cause I wanna watch my own 10th end on the Jumbotron next door. Yeah, I'm going to the patch. Gonna have me a cowboy town.
Counts, the final performance of the Dancing Waiters was a special one. And even though Jim Albo and company may never dance the can-can again, there is little doubt the Dancing Waiters and their accomplishments, forged by their can-can attitude, community pride, and volunteerism, will resonate through the hills of Rossland for many years to come.
You know, you always have mixed feelings when you go into something like this. It's been a lot of work. We're going to miss the fun we've had out of it. Certainly, we've gotten as much fun out of it as we've put into it.
I've had a lot of fun with all the fellows. We've had a number of the fellows, of course, that over the years have died. All of us are unfortunate enough that we lose family and friends, and a number of the fellows that have been in here with us have passed on. But it's always been a fun time with the fellows and the community as a whole, the spirit in the community. Problems, they always arise when we're getting organized, but when the smoke clears, everybody has had a good time, the community has come together, and the work is done.